shadow figure, I think. This happened to me a while ago, but recently it's been on my mind more. I just want to know if anyone encountered this figure or know what it is. If you have any idea what this is, please tell me. From 2015 to 2016, I encountered a shadowy figure. I was 13 when I first saw him. It was summer, and my family always had parties with neighbors and close friends. Everyone would come to hang out in our kitchen/dining room and our porch. We lived near a lake, so most people wanted to stay outside. Our kitchen/dining room connects to the back of the house with a long hallway. There were rooms that branched off of it. During the party, I was in the kitchen when I saw a tall, not unnatural, but he was almost to the doorframe, and lean man. He was running in the hallway into one of the rooms that branched off. The room specifically was a wet room that went into the garage. I followed it into the room, which, yes, is dumb thinking about it now, but I was a curious kid. He no longer was there. I would have heard him go into the garage. The door to it is creaky like some horror movie. At this time, I didn't think much of it. This is when it gets a bit strange and unlucky time. After the first time I noticed him, I could sense him in some way. I knew where he was. I didn't always notice it, but random points throughout the day, I could tell where he was. The fall following that summer, my parents were diagnosed with 2 different illnesses. One terminal, the other wasn't supposed to be, but ended up being so. It was unlucky in every manner for everyone. I am an only child, if that's important. We also had a dog, but the dog moved in with our neighbors during this time because we could not take care of her. During this time, I found myself living with 2 terminally ill parents. There were other people who helped around and such. The shadow figure became more frequent and noticeable. At times, I could even feel his mood. It was a strange connection. He followed me, not my parents, which I think is odd. There are 4 points that I remember the most out of everything, in the order I remember it happening. The first was when I got onto my school bus. I felt him. He was sitting a couple of seats behind me. I don't know why, but he was there. The second time was when I was sitting downstairs in the back room that was the last room connected from the long hallway on the first floor. I was watching some Vocaloid videos. This I remember clearly. A puff of air hit my neck. I don't know if it was a breath or something, but I knew it was him. It was him. He was leaning over behind me and breathed. This part I'm unsure, but I think it was on purpose, to spook me or something. The third time, I was at my aunt and uncle's house. I was going to move there later on, but I was hanging out for a bit. My aunt and uncle lives about half an hour away, if that's important. I was sitting out on the couch when I noticed him. He was there, outside the window, crouching. I could see from his shoulders and up. He just stayed there till I got called back into the conversation. The fourth time that was notable was the one that sticks with me the most. During the whole time I saw him, I never said anything to anyone. He didn't like it. I don't know why I knew that, but I told someone. My friend was over with her mother, and we were in the kitchen. I remember her mother could see energies. This isn't too important, but it's why I told her, to see if someone knew that he was there. The second I told her, I felt something close to anger, but deeper, more dangerous. It wasn't from me. The shadow figure was sitting on a bed in the back room down the hallway. It looked like someone with perfect posture, back straight, head forward, hands on his knees. He didn't move, but I could feel that I wasn't supposed to talk about him. My friend's mom said she could feel him back there. I don't know if that's true, but maybe she did.
After this, he slowly faded in a way. It wasn't abrupt or anything, but I noticed him less. My parents passed, and I stopped sensing not long after. This all happened in a year. Odd things I'll mention that I didn't know where they fit. The shadow figure I had called the runner when I was younger. He was fast, but not inhuman. He looked like a runner, like an Olympic one. The only odd in appearance was that he was a shadow. No eyes, hats, odd clothes, or anything truly notable. I also don't think he was evil, but definitely not good either. My house also was haunted, not by him, but a lot of people have come over and said the house was creepy at times. It was a renovated house, added a second story. No big events happened on the grounds on the history of the property. The reason I'm putting this up now, after so long, is because some strange feeling is telling me to call for him back, which is weird.
Shadow creature. What crossed our path that night? Please be kind here. I don't even like to tell this story because I feel like no one will believe me. I'm relatively new to Reddit, but seeing others share their experiences here made me finally think maybe it's time I tell mine. Side note, my friends' names have been changed for this story, as they are still together and very reluctant to ever bring this up. This must have been around 2007. One night, 2 friends and I were out ghost hunting in a very remote little town in western NY. My friend Jane wanted a couple more pictures in the old cemetery, so her boyfriend and I waited in my SUV while she did her thing. It must have been around midnight, and we were parked on a back road, but there were some streetlights up ahead. Jane was behind us and off to the right, but we could still see her in her flashlight. John and I happened to be looking up the road when, about 50 to 65 yards ahead, out from under the streetlight on the left-hand side appeared a black figure in a wide brim hat. He just appeared. It was blacker than black, more like a void. 100% it was not a person. This being had absolutely no features, but we could make out the hat from the profile. It was a flat-top hat with a wide brim around it. On my mother's grave, it took maybe 30 steps before it morphed, only way I can describe it, into a black cat before it reached the streetlight on the opposite side of the road and disappeared into a field. Again, you could tell it was the shape of a cat, but it was just a black void. John and I stared at each other for about 2 minutes before we could even speak. When the time came, all he could say was, "You saw that too, didn't you?" We continued to sit there in absolute awe, in sheer terror. Jane came back not long after, and I couldn't even move to unlock the doors. I was able to move my hand just enough to hit the unlock button and let her back in. She jokingly said, "You both look like you saw the devil himself." John was a huge guy, very tall, muscular, and intimidating. I looked back over and he was shaking and in tears. All he could say was "cat." I tried to explain to Jane what had happened, but I struggled to even talk. It was about a 35-minute drive back home, and I can remember Jane saying things like, "This isn't funny anymore. You guys are scaring me." John insisted we take him to his church, where we both said a prayer to Mother Mary at the outdoor statue. While he continued to pray, I tried to explain to Jane what we had seen. I remember telling her and thinking how crazy I sounded. To this day, it still gives me a chill to my core. Whatever it was not of this earth, is all I know. A part of me wants answers so badly, but then I keep thinking maybe I'm better off not knowing exactly what it was. Jane and I lost touch over the years, but did reconnect eventually. We talked about that night, as it was always the elephant in the room. She told me that following that incident, all of the crosses in her mom's house would randomly turn upside down for a couple weeks after this happened to us. It only stopped when Jane's mom went around the house very deep in prayer and blessed it. Jane and John lived with her at the time. Did something follow them home? I've never seen anything like that again, and I pray I never will. Thanks for letting me share here. Edit. Just days after I posted this, my cat died in my arms of a sudden medical emergency. The exact same day, today, about 12 hours prior, Jane's 8-year-old dog died. My cat was 16, but I can't help but wonder if my telling this somehow brought it on.
Shadow figure in my house. So this happened around 3 years ago when I was still in college. It was late night and I was studying in my room with my laptop facing me. From where I was seated, I was getting a clear view of the drawing room. It wasn't all dark, but dimly lit. As I was concentrating on the screen, I suddenly felt that I was being watched. I looked up and I couldn't believe what I saw. A figure, all black, with no face and nothing, just a huge blob of darkness, was standing in the drawing room near the curtains and was looking right at me. It didn't move when I saw it, and nor could I. There was this brief moment where we just looked at each other, and then suddenly it vanished. I was still in shock and couldn't move myself in that minute. I know what I saw, and it knows as well. I knew I had to just stand up and go check my house, and that's what I did. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and ran to my drawing room. There was nothing. Nothing. I went to my mother's room and she was sleeping. I didn't want to wake her up, so I checked rest of the house to found nothing, and then came back to my room, back again in front of my laptop. The whole night I was in utter shock, but what was interesting is that I didn't actually feel like it threatened me. It made me curious and scared. At that time, my father was living separately as he was posted in another state due to his job. When months later he visited us, he told us that he saw a shadowy figure in his house as well. And I asked him on which date and month, and this was coincidentally around the same time period when I had my encounter. I wondered for a long time if this was just a dead relative visiting us, or some real creepy shit. But after this, I had a few more tiny incidents in that house, which sort of made me immune to being super scared.
Shadow figure. Okay, so I was told to post this story by a work client. This is one of a few instances where something creepy/spooky happened in my parents' house, which for whatever reason they always seem to buy haunted houses. They are even currently in a haunted flat, as they have their own stories before I was born. Anyway, this happened in the living room. It was my mom and I, alongside our dog and cat. The way this room is laid out is that the entrance is to the right and the door opens inward, which is where my mom was sitting behind it in the chair. It kind of obscures the view of the room slightly. While I was sitting on the couch facing the room and the door was to my right, the dog was lying next to me on the couch with the cat on the other side, both of them fast asleep. We were watching TV, which was to the left of the room, and just to point out, we weren't watching anything creepy that may have triggered the imagination. It started with me seeing those weird little black squiggly lines you sometimes get in the corner of my eyes in the center of the room. Didn't think anything of it, but then they kind of started to all clump together until it began forming a black human figure. And I mean human. It formed a head, torso, arms, and legs. It stood for a moment, then just walked out. The legs moved, taking steps, and the upper part shuffled along with the motions until it got to the doorway, where it stopped, then disappeared. I'm just completely blanking what happened, because I do not mess with that type of shit. Once it reached the doorway, my mom paused the TV but didn't move. I stared at her thinking, is she gonna get up? A couple of minutes passed, and she still hadn't moved, so I said,
"Are you going to play it?" She jolted with a gasp and turned towards me. "Bloody hell, you almost gave me a heart attack. When did you get back?" I kind of froze for a moment, and I just gave her an odd look. "I never left." She kind of looked at me for a moment, then leaned forward to peer around the doorway before sitting back and turning to me. "Did you see that figure, too?" I must have given her a look of confirmation, because she kind of went a bit wide-eyed and white. It was a few seconds after that we both kind of clocked on to the animals, who were now wide awake and staring point blank at the doorway, frozen stiff. We both said their names to get their attention. Nothing, not even a flick of the ears. I gave the dog a tap, nothing, waved my hand in front of the cat's face, and it didn't even blink. They both just kept staring. We looked at each other again, then I got up and closed the door, and we went back to watching TV, which I know is a cliché horror movie move, but we both agreed silently not to acknowledge it, and it's not like it did anything harmful, other than a scare. I hope this gives you guys a little shiver down the spine. There are a bunch of other instances that I, my mom, and dad had separately.
They even have more stories before I was born, which I may post if I can, or if any wants more family haunting stories.